Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
And we're live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the great state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends, and welcome back to the program for this Tuesday edition of the Michael Duke. Everybody's like in the chat room was like, I thought it was Wednesday. I think, why would you want to rush the week, man? We're already halfway through the month. It's already how did we get to the 7th month of the year already? And we're halfway through it. It was just 4th of July was yesterday. And here we are. It's just a beautiful day, man. Beautiful day. We're ready to go. Bright, beautiful ball of sun sticking up over the northern hills here as we get ready to go for this beautiful Tuesday edition of the big radio broadcast. Tuesdays, of course, means the weekly top 3. Brad Keithley with Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets is going to be joining us today, and we're going to be cracking into 3 big topics that he thinks that we should be paying attention to here on the program. And I'm excited. I'm excited to do it here. We're coming up on 11 years with Brad. Brad's laughing right now because he said, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to be talking with Brad this morning. It's going to be fantastic. Much better than Cats. I'd watch it again and again. Anyway, we're going to be diving into that right now. Chris Story finishing up with us here later on the program. Meanwhile, Brad Keithley joins us right now. Hello, my friend. How are you doing?
Michael, I'm doing great today. Do you think we ought to have balloons? We ought to have some sort of celebration
we ought to have a party. I mean, we're going on 11 years now of you and I talking about the same 17 things over and over and over again. This is very important stuff. But it's just, I guess this is where we just should tell ourselves, just don't get weary in well doing. I guess we just got to keep talking about it until something changes. I don't know what's going on, but we're going to dive into it. I can't
remember what month did we start? What month did you take over?
September of 2014. That was when it was. September of 2014. We're coming up on the 11th anniversary of that right now. So it's been a hot minute, Brad. And I mean, a few things have changed, and maybe we've made a little headway on a few things. Yeah, we have a lot less hair. I'm a lot grayer than I was when we got started. Luckily, I guess 11 years ago, I wasn't using video all the time, so we couldn't, I can't go back and look at the progression. But I did see some pictures the other day when we first moved down there, and I was like, there's a lot of brown in that beard. What happened to me? What happened in the meanwhile? Anyway, we're ready to rock and roll here with Brad. Who's had a busy week himself. He's had a busy week. We're going to start off with number 1, which includes the one big beautiful bill, or as Brad calls it, the one big bad beautiful bill, the badass beautiful bill. And we're going to talk about the details on this. And the big question is, number 1 for today, is it going to provide the development we need? And I guess the question is, will it provide the development we need in the time frame that we need it? I think that's probably the bigger, more precise question. Brad, good morning, my friend.
Good morning, sir. It's interesting. The real question is, will it provide the revenues we need?
Right.
The development's important, but does that development turn into revenues for the state in the time frame that we need? it's there have been a series of articles that people have been talking about, and I've had questions about, including one from Alex DeMarmond, who's the business reporter for the Anchorage Daily News. It starts with there's an article in the Alaska Beacon, but also in the ADN and elsewhere. The headline is USGS report says federal lands in Alaska hold large share of undiscovered oil and gas. And then the first paragraph says about half of what's known as the estimated undiscovered technically recoverable oil lying below federal lands is in Alaska, as is more than a quarter of the estimated natural gas, according to a new report from the U.S. Geological Survey. And that's a big deal. That's an indication by a reputable source that there's a lot of oil and gas sitting underneath Alaska lands. But that's only the starting point of any analysis of whether we're going to do better. The next question is whether you can have access to those lands. You may have a huge amount of oil someplace, but if you don't have access to those lands, it really doesn't do you any good. And that's where the one big beautiful bill, John Hendricks is the one who called it the one big bad beautiful bill or something like that. But that's where the one big beautiful bill comes in. It opens up access to Alaska lands in a way that we really haven't had before. It requires leasing not only on the North Slope, not only in NPRA and in ANWR, but also in Cook Inlet, and really opens up access to potential access in terms of leases issued to additional lands.
Sorry about that, Brad. We had a little bit of an internet slurp there for a second there. You were saying it's technically recoverable, but that's where the hitch is.
Yeah. So the question is whether you can get access to the first question of several is whether you can get access to those lands, and that's where the one big beautiful bill comes in terms of providing additional access. It sets up leasing both in NPRA and in ANWR, additional leasing both in NPRA and in ANWR, and sets up additional leasing also in the Cook Inlet. And so access, the one big beautiful bill addresses access in the sense that it opens the potential for access to what may be significant additional reserves. But that's only the second step. The third step is, does the geology prove that there's really oil there? What the USGS study is an evaluation of estimated undiscovered technically recoverable. And what that's really talking about is potentially there's additional oil on these Alaska lands. And the question is, first, can you get access up to it? And then geologically, is the oil actually recoverable as opposed to technologically recoverable, theoretically recoverable? And then the final question is whether it's economic to produce. And we won't know that for a long period of time. And as you and I have discussed, that really in a significant way depends upon the next election. These development horizons or these development timelines are fairly long. Even if you have good permitting, even if the permitting times go well, the development times are fairly long. And the question is whether producers feel confident enough that they're going to have long-term access. That is, that the next election cycle isn't going to snap back and all of a sudden shut down access to these lands, whether they're going to have long-term access in a way that justifies the significant upfront investment they have to make in order to recover these reserves. And
that's part of the problem with the politicization of this whole process back and forth, right? What used to be kind of more of a market-driven approach has become so heavily regulated and so involving the government in every aspect. It's been politicized at every turn.
Yep, exactly right. And so that's a big issue. When in this cycle producers begin to feel confident they can step out. Now, I noticed the other day that Conoco had announced, or yesterday actually, Conoco had announced plans for additional development around Willow, additional development in their share of NPRA on lands they've already leased. And so they feel confident making some additional exploration decisions, some additional development exploration decisions around Willow. But that's really, I mean, they don't have to set up much. Willow's already there. The infrastructure's already there. And so that's a relatively a short cycle development that they can go out and explore for and potentially development. So that's a good sign, certainly of additional development. But I truly think some of this is going to hinge on how the 2026 elections go, how the congressional elections go, whether the Republicans hold both houses, and whether there's an indication that they're going to continue to hold the presidency after Trump, after this term. And so we're not there where there's a confidence level, I think, where producers are going to be making long-term development decisions. But, we've got a ways to go. They've got access. And so that's the first step of many. The final step is, does that translate into revenues for the state? The One Big Beautiful Bill does provide additional royalties going to the state from the additional development. But NPRA, additional development in NPRA, is still subject to the local preference. So even though the NPRA revenue sharing steps up under the One Big Beautiful Bill after a period of time, steps up under the One Big Beautiful Bill, it is that additional revenue, that additional royalty would be subject to local preference and really go to the North Slope Borough and other localities on the North Slope. It really doesn't help state general fund revenues. It's different in ANWR. ANWR is not subject to the local preference. And so any development over in ANWR would the increased royalty that the bill provides for development from ANWR would go to the state, and that's a good thing. But ANWR is several years off, even if everything works perfectly, even if the leases go off, significant players take the leases, even if the geology proves that there's oil there. The development time frame for ANWR and the confidence level they're going to need to develop ANWR is still quite a period off. So yes, it doesn't provide for potential additional revenues to the state. I mean, opens up the opportunity for that, but that's a ways off and subject to, are the producers going to have confidence in the next election cycle?
Yeah, and that raises the question. I mean, of course, one of the big pushes was even the president, and Nick Begich just talked about that and everything else. Now is the time for Congress to act while they still have some of these priorities to actually solidify some of these decisions. But is there the political will in Congress to do these things, to lock them in for a longer term so they can't just be subject to presidential whims?
Well, and as we found out, that's hard to do. I mean, Trump is proving that executive power is much broader, I think, than some anticipated in prior administrations, and is proving the power of executive orders in a way that, frankly, we haven't seen before. So, or demonstrating the power of executive orders in a way we haven't seen before. So it's you're not certain, and uncertainty is not a friend to development. I mean, producers don't want to put a whole lot of money down in pursuing a project if they're uncertain. I mean, geologic uncertainty is one thing, technical uncertainty is another thing. But if you've got political uncertainty about whether you're going to continue to have access to those lands or continue to be able to develop those lands, that's a huge amount of uncertainty that producers aren't willing to undertake. I mean, given the opportunities available in the world, there are other more certain plays that you can pursue than one that's been so subject to a yo-yo, a political yo-yo over the years.
Somebody just said, have a little faith, Brad. I don't think this is about Brad having faith. I think this is about the realistic, what's going on. That's like saying let's just get a gas line now. Okay, well, that's great. But there's this little reality called economics that we have to deal with as well. I mean, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see the drilling. I'd love to see all that stuff. But no company or private individual or investment firm is going to dump tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars into a prospect that 5 years from now could be 100% reversed through executive order. That's part of the problem here. We've got to have congressional underwriting of the direction that the president's going.
Yeah. And continued underwriting. I mean, it doesn't do any good for Congress to pass the law now if Congress is going to undo it. If we're going to have a different Congress in 4 years or a different Congress in 2 years, and they're going to start chipping away at it. So it's there's a lot of political. I mean, people say that America is a safe political region. The safe legal region that you can rely on decisions. You can't. I mean, we've seen that. We are the poster child. Alaska is the poster child for that, about how you get yo-yoed back and forth. So I think what we're going to see is gradual steps. First in NPRA. Conoco's announcement is a good one. First in NPRA, because we've got existing footprint in NPRA that you can just sort of gradually step out on. I think we're going to see gradual, sort of testing the waters and stepping out a bit. If the Republicans hold the Congress in 26, if there's another president of similar bent with President Trump in 28, from a resource development standpoint, then I think you'll see more significant steps. But it's going to be a gradual process. The mere fact that the oils that the USGS says there's oil there, and that the One Big Beautiful bill provides additional access to it, that isn't enough. The economics are important, and the economics are subject to the political uncertainty.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues. Number 2 is dead ahead. We'll be back with more right after this. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Okay, we are in the break. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. Did you do a little painting around there, Brad?
No, I'm visiting my mother, and I've changed the base I use. I've changed the location I use.
It's just to say, 'cause the chair looks familiar, but the wall is totally different.
It's a different house and a different office setup. So,
well, that's good. You're all done with your music stuff. That was a great time. Was had by all.
Well, I'm all done with it for that week.
Well, I'm sorry. I did.
I've got a concert I'm going to in Chicago on Friday night this week. I mean, every week's a new week, right? But yes, I'm done with the visit to Cape Breton. This visit to Cape Breton until later in the fall.
Good for you. Good for you. It's always good when you get to go to your happy place. I feel that, and now I live in my happy place, so I guess it's all good stuff. Let's see. That was Kim saying, have a little faith, Brad. I mean, again, it's not about faith. We can have faith. It's just the question of what is the reality of what is coming around, coming around to it.
Investors don't operate on faith. Investors operate on relative degrees of certainty, and
right.
And they want a lot more than just faith.
Yeah.
Before they put the money down.
Well, we could be nothing but, sterling optimists around here. And it's not going to change a thing unless we address some of the issues that cause that uncertainty. That's the thing. That's why we keep diving into these things. Brian had asked early on, but is there a market for all these big, beautiful barrels? Can they be extracted at a profit? And that's the big question, because all this potential oil, the USGS report, it does not talk about the economics. It just talks about technically recoverable, which means with modern technology, and it's a guesstimate, right? But it doesn't do the economics of it at all.
Yeah, it doesn't deal with the economics. Interestingly enough, there was one other OPEC has their annual World Oil Outlook conference this time of year, and they announced their new projections, and their new projections are that oil demand continues to grow by about 50%, if I remember the numbers correctly, from about 100 million barrels a day currently to about 150 million barrels a day by 2050. You remember during COVID and during the early phases of climate concerns, the expectations were that we'd hit peak oil, or would hit peak oil somewhere along in here and then start declining in terms of demand, peak oil in terms of demand. But OPEC's announcement is, or OPEC's analysis is, that oil is going to continue to grow. Now, that's self-serving in a way. OPEC wants oil to continue to grow, and wants investors and wants others to believe that oil demand is going to continue to grow. But it was an interesting analysis, and it wasn't even that we were plateauing. It was that we were growing. Oil demand was growing by 2050. So, there's a range of positions out there. IEA, International Energy Agency, who has been the most pessimistic about oil growth, most optimistic about the replacement of oil with renewables and other sources of energy, has gradually tilted its expectations of the future back up to where oil's plateauing, maybe a slight increase for a significant period into the future. So there's to answer Brian's question, there's a higher expectation of overall oil demand, global oil demand going forward than there has been in the past. And the economics of Alaska are good once you get past the upfront investment you have to make for Alaska barrels. So
then it becomes stable once the oil is actually pumping. It's up until that point that it kind of screws you. Yep. Brian also said, Brad, have you heard a report that Santos may be purchased by ADNOC? I don't know what that is, but
ADNOC. It's Abu Dhabi, the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, and that's from ADNOC's play. From ADNOC's side, that's an LNG play.
All right. Sorry, 15 seconds, Brad. I didn't look at the clock. All right. So we're going to jump back into this here. We're going to get to it. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. Here we
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Oh, yeah, that's me. Known worldwide as a pain in the Michael Duke Show. Good morning, my friends. Welcome back to the program. Hour one continues. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top three. We move on to number two, which is going to be the big question we're going to be asking ourselves for the next 18 months. Will any candidates actually articulate and face the problems that we're facing? They actually address the real problems. Brad, what made you dive into this one?
Well, there's an article that Nat Hertz, I think, published yesterday. And so it will work its way through the various publications. He published it on his Northern Journal, which is his website, but it typically works through the other publications. The headline of it is National Democrats are salivating over a Mary Peltola bid for U.S. Senate, but Alaska's governor's race could be wide open too. And the article is really about, what influences are at play with Peltola's decision on whether she runs for the Senate race or the governor's race. I've heard people speculate on both sides that, she's definitely running for the Senate against Dan Sullivan, or, she's definitely running for the open governor's seats where she doesn't have to face and incumbent. And it's an interesting article for those who are into the political end of things. That would it's a good read. There is one interesting tidbit in there. They asked Tom Begich for his reaction to all this, and he said, If Mary runs for Senate, I, Tom Begich, am definitely running for governor. If Mary runs for governor, I am definitely supporting Mary for governor. So Begich essentially implies that he's not the fallback for the Senate race. But if Peltola runs for the Senate, then Tom Begich, is the fallback for the governor's race, the Democrat fallback for the governor's race. And so we're beginning to get in this season where candidates are forming. There's something like 5 candidates announced, Republican candidates announced already. There was another one announcing this week, a doctor who some speculate can self-fund his campaign, like Bill Walker did back in the day. So we're beginning to get a lot of discussion about it. But the question I have is any of these candidates going to discuss the issues that ordinary Alaskans are facing, the middle and middle income Alaska families that sort of make up the bulk of the state, the middle 60%, with the 20% down at the low end, 20% at the high end, the middle 60%. And there's several articles or several publications that have raised issues that those middle income Alaska families are facing. One, the Fairbanks News Miner picked up a report from the Alaska Department of Labor that says, the headline of which is "Economic Report: Alaska Inflation Stabilizes Yet Prices Remain High." And that's picking up on the Alaska Trends. It's a monthly publication from the Alaska Department of Labor, economic publication. It's picking up on a story in the most recent Alaska Trends that talks about the fact that inflation is sort of leveling off. Alaska inflation is leveling off, which is sort of the good news. But the bad news is that we've had substantial inflation over the last several years, which has elevated prices. So the fact is, from where they were before COVID. So the fact that we're returning to a normal rate of inflation growth is good news, but the bad news is the prices that have elevated substantially over the past few years due to high inflation are sort of sticking. We're not having deflation where those prices go down. We're just going to continue to experience the impact of the elevation of prices over the past few years. And the Trends article makes a good point about the fact that you really need to continue to focus on the impact of past inflation and where those prices have gotten to. For Alaskans, you need to continue to focus on that as much as the fact that we're having moderating inflation going forward, and the impact that has on Alaska consumers. There's another article in the Frontiersman that says Alaska job growth appeared to slow in May, according to state data. Another in the Alaska Beacon that says healthcare takes big toll on cost of living in Alaska cities, report shows, and it discusses the fact that healthcare in Alaska's major cities, Juneau, Anchorage, Fairbanks, is substantially higher than in the nation as a whole, and has a huge impact on cost of living in those locations. It's not that it isn't higher elsewhere in the state as also. It's simply that the report focused on the major municipalities, and so that's why the report or the article focuses on the major municipalities. It very well could be a big driver, and likely is a big driver elsewhere in the state as well. So we've got big cost drivers, cost of living drivers, past inflation, healthcare, and other things that are affecting middle income Alaska families. And the question is, are the gubernatorial candidates really going to address that? I'm concerned that what we're going to see is sort of particularized focus. Like, I would not be surprised if Peltola or Begich says, I'm going to bring your healthcare down through more government regulation or through more government controls on healthcare costs. I wouldn't be surprised if Republican candidates said, I'm going to bring up jobs, or I'm going to bring up the opportunities from jobs through more resource development. And I'm going to, work with the Trump administration on more resource development. Those are all sort of particularized little nuances. But the question is whether, generally speaking, politicians are going to speak to the broad swath of middle Alaska families in the concerns that they're having dealing with the economics.
Which would mean that they would have to focus on the private economy. I mean, that's part of the problem. They would have to focus on the private economy instead of it all being about the government sector.
Yeah, and it also brings us back to the PFD. I mean, one of the things that I've continued to harp on and will continue to harp on is the regressive nature of PFD cuts, funding government, what government we have, funding government through PFD cuts, because that is having a big impact, certainly on lower income Alaska families. You see the big impact there, but it's also having a disproportionate impact on middle income Alaska families. And so we're really, as costs are going up, we're sort of taking out through PFD cuts, we're sort of taking out the base, a component of base income, a component of base revenue to Alaska families by using PFD cuts as the way to fund government. And so I to deal with what Alaska families are facing, we not only need to talk about the cost impact, but we also need to talk about what government's doing to make the income side of Alaska families worse off. And I think that candidates who really want to talk to middle income Alaska families, really want to focus on middle income Alaska families, need to talk about other ways to develop government revenue other than through PFD cuts, to replace PFD cuts and eliminate the disproportionate adverse effect on middle income Alaska families that they are experiencing through the use of PFDs as a way of funding government. A couple of ways that I think that we need to be talking about. One is oil taxes. I think that, as we've talked about on the show before, I think there is capacity to reform oil taxes without adversely impacting future development. We are getting significantly less as a share of gross revenues in this decade from SB 21 than we got in the prior decade in the 2010s, and we certainly had investment going on that's resulting in production in this decade, but we certainly had investment going on then. So I think there's room on oil taxes that candidates ought to be talking about, and I think there's room. I wrote an article that was released yesterday in the Landmine yesterday, one of the weekly columns I write, talking about the performance of the Permanent Fund Corporation. We've talked about it on the show before, that the Permanent Fund Corporation is significantly underperforming relative to where it could be, and that's costing revenues in terms of the level of POMV draws. That's costing significant revenues to government. And I think those are things that we can talk about before we ever get to taxes. I mean, reforming the tax structure. I think those are things that we can talk about to relieve the pressure on using the PFD as a revenue source. So I'll be looking for candidates who really want to deal with what's affecting middle income Alaska families, not only from the cost standpoint and talking about things that affect all of us in terms of costs, but also from the income standpoint and what the state has done in terms of PFD cuts to regressively reduce the incomes of middle income Alaska families by using PFD cuts as the state's primary revenue source.
Well, and this is the 12 million pound gorilla in the room, right? I mean, if we could only get a control of our taxation or of our spending, we could pull all this down. But again, there's got to be the political will to do it. And there's a lot of platitudes that go around from all these different politicians at the various levels. But nobody really seems to be taking a stab at the real problem, which, of course, is that the private economy is continuing to struggle.
Yeah, I know Bernadette's talked about restoring the PFD and making that a principal stand of our campaign. But you can't do that. Realistically, you can't do that if you don't have replacement revenues. You can't restore. I mean, that's what Dunleavy ran into. You can't restore the PFD if you don't have replacement revenues to cover the at least some of the spending. We can cut spending some, but at least some of the spending that's going on. And so to realistically discuss the issue at the same time as you discuss restoring the PFD, you're going to have to discuss where replacement revenues are going to come from. And if you're not doing that, you're being as disingenuous as on the issue as Dunleavy's turned out to be. I mean, Dunleavy talks a lot about restoring the PFD, right? I mean, his budget come out restoring the PFD, but he doesn't. But without replacement revenues, it's unrealistic. It's just rhetoric. So we need candidates who are going to deal realistically with this issue, recognize the adverse impact that PFD cuts have had on middle-income Alaska families from the income side, work to alleviate what government has done to those families in terms of the regressive taxation of cutting PFDs, but also at the same time address where they're going to develop a replacement revenues to replace the state's reliance on PFD cuts.
Which, of course, is the one thing that they don't want to do at this point. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. We are continuing here. We'll be back in just a moment. Number 3 is waiting in the wings. We'll see what Brad has to say here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Don't forget, you can check us out on Facebook if you want to join the chat room. It's just me, Brad, and 50 or 60 of our closest friends here hanging out on the internet. So if you want to come out, you can go to facebook.com/MichaelDukeShow/live. And we'll be back with more in just a moment. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, break time. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. Teresa said, some of us are hearing the acronyms being used by Brad and thinking, what's that? Teresa, what acronym were you talking about? Maybe Brad can explain that to us here as we go through. Before we were so rudely interrupted by the show, we were going to answer Brian's question about the Santos purchase by Abu Dhabi. What's going on there?
So ADNOC is becoming big in LNG, wants to become big in LNG, global LNG. And Santos is, well, although we know it in Alaska for the Pikka development, the oil development on the North Slope, globally, Santos is a big LNG player. And when they acquired Oil Search, which was one of the predecessors of the Pikka field, when Santos acquired Oil Search, they acquired a big PNG, a big LNG project in Papua New Guinea, PNG, what's referred to in the industry as PNG. And so Santos really has a big LNG side, and ADNOC's interest in Santos is really to scoop up those LNG assets, join them with the LNG assets that ADNOC already has, and become an even bigger player in the LNG industry. It's unclear what that might mean for Pikka, but look, Pikka is a good field. It's way down the road in terms of development. It's had previous owners, and it's sort of continued on despite the changes. And even if ADNOC for some reason decided that Pikka wasn't a strategic fit with its overall view of where it's going, Pikka would be easily saleable on the market. So, and ADNOC really wouldn't demand that high a price, I don't think, because ADNOC's going to be focused on developing the LNG assets that it would get with Santos. So, yeah, it's something that's occurring. ADNOC's made a bid. Santos has essentially accepted the bid, subject to a lot of conditions, and it's proceeding forward. And yes, it may affect PICA, but I don't think it's going to be a big adverse impact on PICA going forward.
Let's see, what else was another one that I caught. Oh, yeah. When you was talking about leaving Cape Breton, you're going to your next concert. Cindy says, I love it. Follow the music, Brad. You know what that made me think? That comment made me think, if Brad didn't like Celtic music, if, Brad instead, like the Grateful Dead or something, you'd be like, he's like one of those followers of the Dead. He just kind of goes everywhere. He's just like but no, he likes the higher class, the Celtic music. So it's acceptable. It would be unacceptable if Brad was following Fish or the Grateful Dead or something, or Widespread Panic or something. But no, he's over here doing his thing.
Well, this actually is Irish music. This is Glenn Hansard, an Irish musician who some may remember was in the movie Once, about an Irish, an up and coming Irish balladeer, and so we're going to go up and see Glenn Hansard. Well, it's sort of Celtic. It's Irish. I mean,
it's Irish Celtic. I mean, it is what it is. It's hey, I'm not judging Brad. I just thought it was ironic that if it was a different type of music, people would do a little askance and saying you're following the Dead. What's going on?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's going to be good. The biggest thing here, Brad, we got about 2 minutes, but the biggest thing with this whole deal, all the things we've been talking about, is always if we could just get the politicians to open their eyes to see the long-term consequences. Right? That's the thing. It seems like everybody's so focused on giving people what they want in the short term so they get reelected. Nobody's looking at the long-term costs, the impact on, private economy, people, anything else. And this is the short-sightedness that is politics. I mean, it has been for 3,000 years.
Yeah, you play to the crowd, you play to the immediacy. But we've got the opportunity on this show at least to talk about the long term, and we've got the opportunity to evaluate candidates on whether they have a long-term vision that's realistic, and a long-term vision that meets the needs of the 60% of Alaskans that are sort of the baseline of the state, and I think they just get lost in the noise. I think that segment of Alaska gets lost in the noise about, I'm going to appeal to this segment, or I'm going to appeal to that segment, or I'm going to appeal to this segment. I think that the base of Alaska sort of gets lost in the noise. And one of the things that when I read articles about Peltola or Tom Begich or the 5 Republicans that have already announced and the more that are likely to come, when I read those articles, I'm going to be looking for and talking about on the show, talking about whether they're really focusing on the fundamentals that affect middle-income Alaska families.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if our little chats here every Tuesday bring about any more future change. Fingers crossed we could see some of that going on. All right, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We're going to continue here. I've been looking forward to this, number 3. Here we go. Let's get to it. Jumping right in.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
All right. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues. We're on to number 3. This is the one that I've been looking forward to because I read this. I thought blood was going to shoot out of my eyes as I read this opinion piece. Brad's got his top 3. His 3 of the top 3 is one journalist should take his own advice, and we're talking about Tim Bradner, who generally speaking is pretty even keeled on most of his reporting and talking and things like that. But this opinion piece in the ADN and in other various outlets is just so tone deaf. It says now more than ever, Alaska needs civics education in our schools. And Brad is like, maybe pot and kettle should meet here somewhere in the middle. Brad, you want to hit me with your thoughts on this?
Look, Tim Bradner is a good reporter. I read his stuff. I read everything that he publishes publicly, at least. When I read the Frontiersman, I go through and I make sure that I've read all the articles that have been bylined by Tim, even if they're local Matsu politics articles, because he just has some great insights, some great economic insights. He follows some good economic sources and uses those in his stories in a way that I think is very good. But every once in a while, he goes off on these tangents, mostly in op-eds. But I'm going to come back and say it creeps into his stories also. Mostly in these op-eds, he goes off on these tangents that get a little preachy and a little preachy about
tone deaf
about his subjects. And this one you read the title. Now more than ever, Alaska needs civic education in our schools is one of those. It starts with focusing on a bill that Senate President Gary Stevens and L.B. Jackson Gray have proposed that would require a civics course as part of the Alaska K through 12 curriculum, and would require students to take the civics courses. And as Tim writes the story, he says there's a good reason for this, because we're in the midst of a situation where people aren't paying attention to the Constitution, people aren't paying attention to the separation of powers, that we're becoming a more dictatorial nation. Sort of goes down this road that you would expect from a strong Democrat, or you've seen from strong Democrats about the dangers of this administration, about the concentration of executive power in the office of the president, and various things. And Tim's focus is, yes, we need civics education because we need to come back to the basics about separation of powers, and about why separation of powers are important, and about why constraints on the executive are important, and sort of goes down that road, and that people ought to be paying attention to the Constitution. Well, the thing that always strikes me when I read one of these things by Tim is that he is part of the problem, not part of the solution, at least in one respect. Whenever you read one of Tim's stories about the PFD, Tim always goes out of his way in the story to say that the PFD, as it exists now, is an obsolete statute, and he rationalizes and justifies the legislature ignoring that statute that's on the books, still on the books, never been amended, never been changed, about how the PFD is to be calculated. That the legislature is justified in ignoring that statute. He uses those words, ignoring the statute. That the legislature is justified in ignoring that, again, another word he uses, obsolete statute. And it strikes me as just sort of pot calling kettle black. I mean, Tim writes this column that goes off on this screed about people not paying attention to the Constitution, not paying attention to the separation of powers, not paying attention to the constraints that the executive is supposed to operate under, not paying attention to various things that are in statutes and constitutions and otherwise, and saying, we need to restore, we need to have a course that emphasizes that people ought to pay attention to the laws, ought to pay attention to the Constitution, ought to pay attention to the statutes, that emphasize all those things. At the same time, Tim is writing stories that says you can ignore statutes because they're obsolete, not because they've been changed, not because a majority of the legislature with concurrence of the governor have changed the statute and made it something different, that you can just ignore a statute because it's been around too long, or it's inconvenient, or it doesn't work, or whatever rationalization he brings up at any given point in time. Tim's part of the problem. I mean, he is in those stories, he is preaching that you can ignore statutes. he is preaching that you can self categorize a statute as obsolete and just ignore it and go on about your business. He is advocating when he does that, he is advocating ignoring law,
right?
Ignoring provisions of law. And I just always think it's really humorous. It's just inconsistent.
It's hypocritical. You're way too nice. It's hypocritical. I mean, at that point, welcome to the Irish democracy, right? We're just going to ignore the laws we don't like. Oh, but this guy, if he does anything that we even, civics, the fall of civilization. That's again, the hypocrisy of this kind of stuff.
It is. And I don't know if Tim recognizes it, to be honest. And Tim, if you listen to this segment along the way, again, you write great stuff. I read everything you write, but this is just sort of silly. It's silly for you to write into your stories how that you can ignore statutes and it's okay for the legislature to ignore the statutes because they're obsolete or because they don't fit the times anymore when those statutes are still on the books. What I would suggest you do is focus on the fact the statute's still on the books and point out that the legislature is ignoring it, just like you want us to point out that the Congress or the president or whoever is ignoring separation of powers, is ignoring the Constitution, is ignoring this, that, or other thing. You want us to point that out. We need civics education to be able to identify and point that out. Well, you need to point out also when the legislature is doing the very same thing, when they're ignoring statutes that they wrote, not changing them, not amending them, but just ignoring them. Right. The statutes that they wrote that are still on the books.
No, it's frustrating to watch again. And he does write well. I've read a lot of his stuff, but again, this one, your bias, your slip is showing. It's just like, it's so blatantly clear. And like you said, it actually bleeds back into his other writings now. The more you see it, the more you can't unsee it, which is unfortunate. Because again, he does a pretty good job on a lot of things, but this one is just so tone deaf, and I'm going to get into it a little bit piece by piece in the next segment. But anyway, we're out of time. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. Brad, thanks for coming on board this morning. And
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
Thank you. I hope you enjoy your concert this Friday. That's what it's all about. All right, folks, we got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Hour 2 dead ahead. Okay, Brad Keithley, final thoughts on this stuff, because again. I read this and I read through it a couple times because I'm like, do you not see the absolute hypocrisy of what you're talking about here? You advocate for all these things to happen in the state simply because you think it's the right thing to do. And just because they can get away with it doesn't mean that they should. And at the same time, things that are falling within the law but are unpopular with you now become the end of civilization. The fate of civilization as we know it is then tied to this.
Yeah, and it's really, I don't want to blow this too much out of proportion, but when you write an article, when you write a news article, was supposed to be a news article, and you call a statute obsolete, you, the writer, believe the statute is obsolete, so you call it obsolete, and you rationalize and justify the legislature ignoring that statute as part of your news article. Well, you're influencing your readers to say, well, if we can call that statute obsolete, then that statute's obsolete, then that, that tradition about how the president ought to act and the constraints the president ought to be under, that's obsolete. And you just lead the reader, at least, I think you lead the reader to have a much more blasé reaction to people ignoring the law elsewhere when you yourself are writing an article and said that you can ignore the law because it's obsolete. Good for the goose, good for the gander. If you want us, if you want us to pay attention to all the traditions, if you want us to pay attention to strict separation of powers, if you want us to pay attention to all of the stuff over here that's still written down that hasn't been changed, then you should pay attention to the stuff over here that's still written down and hasn't been changed.
Yeah. Well, he's and it's almost like he's championing it, right? At that point, it's like when he says it's the opposite, he's championing the behavior of the legislature, at the same time castigating what's going on with the president or whatever else, and kind of falling into that same trap. And again, your slip is showing, your bias is showing. And if it was just in an op-ed, it'd be one thing. But as you said, it bleeds into all these other things, and it becomes very obvious that this is kind of the tact that they're coming from. It's kind of frustrating, because one of the things that I've been critical of is that we just don't have enough journalistic depth in this state, maybe journalistic integrity, but also journalistic ambition, where they actually dig into an article instead of just paraphrasing a press release. They're actually getting, okay, they said this, let me go over here and get the opposite side and then have a balanced art. That's just not happening for the most part.
Yeah. And I agree with that. But that's really, that's sort of a separate issue, right? That's sort of a, are you telling the full story issue here? In this situation, Tim is becoming an advocate in the middle of the news story by talking about and rationalizing, the legislature ignoring the statute and calling the statute obsolete. It almost gets to the point, frankly, when I read one of his news stories, I'm going through with my brain and saying, okay, this is news. This is analysis. This is legitimate stuff. Well, here's Tim's opinion over here. Right. And got to set that aside and look for the hardcore stuff in there. And it's difficult sometimes, particularly when he's talking about how the state is setting up the budget, because all of this, the PFD doesn't count. It's obsolete. It's out of date. All of that permeates any story he does.
Right.
He does on the budget.
I got about 2 minutes here. I did want to comment, because you've been supporting candidates, and I saw your post the other day where it wasn't Jubilee Underwood. It was Alexi Moore, who was under fire for some of the things. And you were like, good job. And you actually wrote her a check because she's taken a lot of different heat. Can you comment on that real quick? Because I thought that was, I thought that was a lot of much ado about nothing. I think there's a FACL contingency out there that's really banging on her about some stuff. But what's your take on that?
So her district, I forget what district number it is, but her district Republican Party sanctioned her for different things, but one of them was supporting Rob Yunt's Senate Bill 133, which is the digital tax, what some try to discount, saying the Etsy tax, but is a tax on digital services being provided in the state. Just like we have a sales tax on goods provided in the state, it would have a tax on digital services being provided in the state. And Alexi had supported Rob's bill, which I thought was a good thing, because we need alternative revenue sources. We need to reduce our reliance on PFD cuts, and I thought Alexi supported that. So when the district sanctioned her for that, there's you and I have had this discussion on the show, but there are very few bills out there that have as small an impact, if any, revenue impact on the state as the digital services tax. When her district sanctioned her for that and told her she could no longer claim to be a Republican, the district Republican said, you can no longer claim to be a Republican because no longer use Republican in your advertising and that sort of stuff. You no longer claim to be a Republican because you supported this bill. Oh, that was just outrageous. Because look, we need people who talk realistically, as we talked about in the second segment today. We need people who talk realistically about what we're going to do on the revenue side if we're going to restore the PFD. And we need people who talk realistically about that. So I thought the district's actions was outrageous. And so I decided to do something about it, and which was write the check at the new maximum that would be set, that's set by the initiative, that would be set by the initiative that's going to go before the board of voters in 26. Write a check and say, look, not only am I going to talk the game, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is.
It's good stuff.
and posted that.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Brad, thank you so much for coming on board. Folks, we're out of time for today. We got to go. Hour 2 is dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. How are you doing? Are you ready to go? You ready to dive into hour 2 of the big radio show today for this Tuesday? I don't know where you're at, but it's a beautiful day here as we get ready to continue on with summer. We're deep in the heart of summer. We're halfway through July. So, I mean, I think this is officially like the halfway point, right? Summer is June to August. That's kind of how I look at it. Here we are, halfway point, losing a little daylight every day, but still trying to enjoy all the things that we can here as we get through this beautiful summer. We just finished up with Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We just did the weekly top 3. I've got some commentary on some of this stuff. I was going to say analysis, but that's way too, it sounds way too highbrow. It's basically just some comments. I got some comments on some of this stuff that Brad was going over. And part of that includes this opinion piece by Tim Bradner from last week in the ADN and in other sources. So we're going to get into that here in just a second. At the end of the hour today, we're going to be joined by none other than Chris Story, the man from Homer, who's going to come on board and talk with us about something positive, which we'll probably need by the end of the show today. We'll probably need some positivity. So we'll and we'll probably talk about his new book, The Millionaire Code, which is an addendum to The Backyard Millionaire. And I just wrapped up the audiobook narration of that for him. And so we'll talk about that we'll talk about that here coming up. Maybe I'll play a little bit of it. We'll see. We'll see how I feel here. I might play a little bit of it for you just so that you can enjoy it a little bit and get a taste, just a tease. That's what we're all about here on the program. All right. I wanted to, forgot before I get too far ahead of myself here. Coming up tomorrow on the program. We got guests tomorrow and Wednesday. Tomorrow, Michael Bowles is going to be joining us. He's running for the Borough Assembly in the Mat-Su. And I Michael reached out to me to talk about things. So we're going to talk with him tomorrow morning. On Thursday, also in the Mat-Su, Michelle Overstreet is going to be joining us. She's with the My House, which is the organization that helps homeless teens and youth in the Mat-Su. She's done I've been talking with her for 10 years. She does just an amazing amount of work on that. So we're going to have Michelle Overstreet on Thursday at 6, and then Bernadette Wilson will be back on the program tomorrow on Thursday in the 7:00 hour to talk about her run for governor. So that should be a big deal. So Michael Bowles tomorrow, then Michelle Overstreet and Bernadette Wilson on Thursday. This week is already just flying right on by, isn't it? just absolutely flying right on by. Speaking of Bernadette, I don't know if you heard, but the former Lieutenant Governor, Craig Campbell, has now joined Bernadette Wilson's campaign. In a statement here, I guess last week, released by the campaign, Craig Campbell praised Wilson's qualifications and framed her as a bold choice for turning around Alaska's current challenges. Here's his quote: "Alaska's future requires a dynamic leader, a person who demonstrated credentials to reverse our stagnating economy, declining statewide educational performance, growing social challenges, and drift away from the founding principles of our state. Bernadette Wilson is that person. As a successful business owner, political activist, and proven leader, she has the distinct qualities necessary to lead our state towards prosperity while protecting our values and the precious aspects that make Alaska exceptional. I'm proud to serve as campaign chairman to elect Bernadette Wilson as Alaska's next governor." Now, Craig is, he's a guy that really has, I think, a lot of respect from people on both sides of the aisle. He's kind of been non-controversial in a lot of ways, but he's always been a strong personality and a strong leader. So I think this is a good signal, and I think it really underscores the seriousness that Wilson is putting into her campaign. I last week I was in Soldotna when she happened to be there doing her meet and greet, so I swung over there and got a chance to chat with her a little bit. And again, I'm just impressed with the seriousness. Now, again, don't always agree, as Brad said in the last hour. Some of her stuff, some of her platform, I guess I would say, is still a little bit pie in the sky, a little ambitious, a little bit of a lot of talk the talk, but it's the walking the walk that makes it hard. And I just don't want to see, I don't want to see her make some of the same mistakes that somebody like Mike Dunleavy has made, where I want her to have a plan instead of just platitudes about things like the PFD and other things. But I think she's really shaping up to be, in my mind anyway, the candidate to watch for this upcoming season. Because I'll be honest, all the other names that I've heard dropped in the last, 18 months for the potential gubernatorial race, just not exciting to me. I don't know about you, but not exciting. I mean, names like Click Bishop, I've heard, Adam Crum, Peter Machicki. Somebody the other day said Treg Taylor, although I don't know if he's actually thinking about running or not. Back in the day, it was questioning whether Natasha von Imhoff would want to run. There's some names that have been thrown around in the Republican circles that are, well, they're just not exciting. It's just more of the same. It just feels like the same old. Nancy Dahlstrom. Nice lady, not someone that I'm like, doing backflips over thinking about running for governor. So those are all names that are out there floating around. And I think the one to watch at this point is Bernadette Wilson, because again of her grassroots movement, the fact that she comes out of not other political circles, but not other politicians' job or government jobs, as almost everybody else on the list does, but the fact that she comes from the private sector in that regard. And in that regard, she's the same as her uncle Wally Hickel. She's the same as Nick Begich. She's the same as Donald Trump, where they're not professional politicians coming out of the private sector and bringing some of that fresh energy. And I hope that I hope she does well. We're going to see, and we're going to have some questions for her on Thursday when she's on the program. But I thought this was a good sign to see somebody like Craig Campbell throw his weight behind the candidacy and campaign of Bernadette Wilson. He's serving as the chairman of her campaign. So I'm excited to hear it. Excited to hear that. We'll see where it leads. We'll see where it leads from there. I'm trying to decide. There's two stories that I want to get. I want to get into Tim Bradner's article, but then there was another story out of the ADN from yesterday that was talking about the child care crisis in Anchorage and a potential solution. And it's well, I guess we'll come back. I can sit on this for a little bit. We'll come back to this. We'll see where we go from here. But I don't want to get too far ahead. Oh man, Fairbanks. What is going on in Fairbanks? So, there's been a slew of stories that have come out of Fairbanks recently that are making me wonder what is going on up there in the land of the midnight sun. That are people off their meds en masse or something in Fairbanks? I mean, we heard the story the other day about the guy who was and I don't have all the details, but about the guy that apparently was kidnapping young women, forcing them to take meth, and then abusing them and then leaving. I mean, that guy. And now we've got the story from Fairbanks that another 39-year-old man was sentenced this week in federal court to serve 22 years in prison and 5 years of supervised release for his role in the fatal fentanyl overdose in 2022. Edward Guinness was accused of supplying the drugs that led to the death of 32-year-old Adam Sakhanin almost 3 years ago. This is from the ADN's As Hollander over at the ADN is writing it. And basically, this was all about what was ironic about this was this goes back to that big drug trafficking sting that they did a couple years ago, where they said they had an inmate serving a life sentence in a California prison. Essentially, he was the ringleader from prison, directing a ring that smuggled fentanyl, heroin, and meth to some of the state's smallest villages. I mean, he's running this whole thing from prison. Tell me again how all these laws that you got are going to, one more law going to affect it? One more this and one more. Criminals, by their definition, I know I've said this before, but by their very definition, break the law, right? And here's the proof. This guy running a huge national smuggling ring from while serving a life sentence in a California prison, and it gets all the way up into Fairbanks. It gets all the way up into Fairbanks, and it's just tragic. But I don't know. It seems like every time I turn around, there's another story about some crazy stuff happening up in Fairbanks, and I'm telling you, folks up there, might want to get a grip on. So, if people are off their meds, you might want to suggest they start taking them again, because dang, it's not a good time had by all. All right. I'm up against it. I want to get into this Tim Bradner story. We're going to talk about that here in just a second, and we're going to continue. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return with more here in just a moment. We'll be back right after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes. Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Yeah, Fairbanks, man. What's going on up there? What is going on up there, man? Frank says the heat is causing it. The heat is causing it. It's COVID. It's COVID. Oh, man. Melissa says, all I can say about that is drugs are bad. Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, I get it. It's just, oof. Yeah. Let's see. Many legislators, said Miguel, are stating that Bernadette is only playing to the crowd, so to speak, stating she gives the speech to the crowd on based on where she's at and what that crowd wants to hear, knowing if she wins, she will still need the legislature. I truly don't know any opinions. I mean, to a point, that's what a lot of governors have to do because, again, they need to have the legislature. But as a strong governor, which Alaska has, the strongest governor in the country, they can direct a lot of things. And the one thing that I'm really interested in hearing about is more about her budgeting ideas, because the governor does have the ability to change the way we budget. And remember, we talked about that. That's the weekly of the charter of changes. Wrong one. Where is it? Nope. Oh man, there's so many different screens here. There it is. Nope. Was that it? Let me kill that right there. There we go. That was my problem. Charter of changes number 4 is change the funding. Change the funding. And if she has the ability or the willingness to go out there and deal with that, then yeah, I think that's a good thing. Bill is like, what? Let it snow? Shut up, Bill. Shut your filthy mouth. All right. That's just all I'm saying here. Did you hear about Chris Story's book? Yeah, you should. You should think about it. Okay. Jeannie says we have to thin down the Republicans on the ticket. Well, good luck with that. I mean, we're stuck with ranked choice voting for at least one more cycle. So good luck with that. Again, you'll have, I mean, I guarantee you there'll be at least 4 Republicans on this ticket. I think by the time it's all said and done, I think there will be at least 4 on that ticket. And again, none of which I'm excited about. Not even Treg Taylor. Melissa just said Treg would be a decent name in the hat. I'm not excited about it. I don't want to see anybody coming out of government jumping into government. That's part of the problem. Henry David says, click Bishop. The very idea makes me want to vomit. He cannot win. I mean, yeah. I mean, it'd be like him or Adam Crum or Natasha von Imhoff or Peter Machicki or Treg Taylor or Nancy Dahlstrom. None of them are exciting. Man, none of them. David also said Dahlstrom's also a nope. She's got 0 charisma, 0 notable accomplishments, and couldn't be bothered to fulfill her duties of election integrity. Yeah, I mean, that's the, Dahlstrom is the archetype NPC. Yeah. Miguel's asking the same question about that I was just asking about what's going on in Fairbanks. He goes, I'd like to know that too. I live in the interior. Yeah, I know, man. I still got family up there. It's still weird, man. What is going on? Let's see. Hasn't that goal number 4 been met? No, it hasn't. The funding has not been changed. The funding, and what I mean by funding is, I mean the way that we factor the budget. My suggestion was that they use a 4-year rolling average, 5-year rolling average of the revenue to create the budget, which she has partially embraced. Anyway, how'd you guys? We gotta go. We're gonna jump back into it. Here we go. Let's do it.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Okay. We're back. Welcome back to the big, beautiful radio show. It's the one big, beautiful radio show. It's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Welcome back to the program. Thanks for coming on board. How y'all doing out there? You ready? going to dive into it. This piece by Tim Bradner, this opinion piece, and it is an op-ed. So again, full disclosure, this is not Tim writing as a, he's not writing it as a journalistic piece. It's an opinion piece. But I mean, I got questions. I got questions for him on this for sure. The piece reads, now more than ever, Alaska needs civics education in our schools. And again, the tone deafness is astonishing. He starts off talking about how Gary Stevens and L.V. Gray Jackson have now, Gary Stevens has actually been promoting this for several years, a civics bill in education. Now, I'm not against that. I think that's a brilliant idea. I think we need to get back to the basics. I think we need to get back to where we, to keep our foundational basics. But he goes on to then talk about how there's a steady erosion of the underpinnings of our Constitution. That's what's threatening us now. Power being grabbed by the executive branch. The Supreme Court and Congress appear gutless to counter this. Our military being used against civilians. Civilians being arrested. U.S. citizens being arrested and shipped out of the country in the dark of night to gulags. I mean, there's a lot to unpack in this thing. Now, look, I've said it once. I'll say it a million times. I'm not the biggest fan of the president. I think he's done some good things and some bad things, right? But I think that the deportation of illegal residents, illegal aliens in this country is something that the majority of the country, we're a country of laws, right? We are a country that, generally speaking, obeys the rule of law. We want to be lawful, law-abiding people. That's our nature. And you've got all these people who have come into the country over the years illegally. They bypassed the system. They short-circuited it, which is a violation of federal law. You're walking into the country without your papers, without all the things, without waiting in line like everybody else and do all that kind of stuff is a real problem. And it is, again, it is illegal. I know everybody wants to dance around that, it seems like a lot of times. I'm not going to dance around it. There's a legal way to come into the country, and there is an illegal way. And yes, back in the day, everybody came in through Ellis Island, and there's people just showed up, and people just landed on the shore, and all those things. But even again, Ellis Island, I mean, there was a process that you came through. You got your name, you got your thing, you got your tags. They wrote you down. They did all that. There was still a process, right? And some people want to shy away from that. Undocumented, on this. No, you broke the law to come into the country. Now, they have been saying, and I believe them, because we're watching, they're naming names, so to speak. Tom Holman and company have been naming names about people who've been coming in, and they basically said, we're going after the worst of the worst first. So I'm getting a little sidetracked here, but this is really irritating me, because later on in the article, he goes back to talks about deportation. He goes, he talks about this deportation and some of the problems. He said, this reminds us of fake emergencies being invented to justify deportations. He compares it to Stalin's Great Terror in the 1930s, which is just an insult he wants us to go back and get a civics class. I think he should go back and do a history class. I think he should go back and actually to compare what's going on today with the Great Terror is I mean, it is I guess it's Godwin's law, right? Everybody's a Nazi, everybody's Hitler when it all boils down to it. But if you go back and look at what happened in 1937, and you look at the number of people, I mean, tens of millions of people, they weren't rounded up and deported, they were killed and buried on the spot, right? So this is a whole different thing. He tries to compare ICE to the secret police. He tries to, I mean, there's so much disingenuousness and hypocrisy in this piece. I mean, I could spend 2 hours dissecting it. Anyway, he comes back and he mentions at one point, he said, now we read that Stephen Miller, who heads immigration policy for President Trump, has set a quota of 3,000 arrests per day. People are being grabbed off the street. People are targeted in places they work, like farms and restaurants. U.S. citizens are being swept into the net too. Well, I don't see a whole lot. But again, he literally has highlighted and italicized 3,000 arrests per day. To which I'm like, okay, 3,000 arrests per day. Now we kind of understand if you look at it, and you do the math, it's estimated that there's, 10 million is a lower number, right? Because some have said 12, some have said 20 million, right? Let's just pick the low number. Let's just say it's 10 million illegal people here in the United States, illegal aliens, illegal immigrants, whatever you want to call them. 10 million. 3,000 arrests a day. Now, first of all, I don't believe that number is sustainable over the long haul, but even if it was, do you realize that if we have 10 million people in this country that are here illegally, which again is on the low side, that it would take 3,333 days to deport almost 10 years to deport the 10 million that we have right now at 3,000 a day. Again, just the absolute hypocrisy in all of this is just astonishing. He goes, it basically, the whole premise of this article is Alaska needs civics basically so that we can recognize all these things that he's talking about, that we're protecting against tyranny, the separation of powers, Congress. He highlights a couple different books, how fascism works and how democracy dies and all these other. Only when it's not your guy on the throne, are you upset about this. And again, the biggest hypocrisy of this whole thing is that at the same time you're championing our local state legislature to just ignore the law because it makes sense. Just ignore the law. It's antiquated, right? It's obsolete. Just like freedom of speech, just like the Second Amendment, just like freedom of religion. Are those all obsolete ideals? We've heard people on the left say that. We've heard people say that it's just a bunch of words written on a piece of paper by a bunch of old white men, right? We've heard those kind of things before. And now he's going back to clutch the pearls to say, well, we need to go back and learn about what we did here. And just, I mean, I hate to break it to you. I am a student of history, and I love the founding era of history. But I'll tell you right now, based on my readings of the founders and the framers, based on my readings of what they said in public, right? The Federalist and the Anti-Federalist papers of Publius and the broadsheets and of their letters back and forth between all these luminaries, Jefferson, Adams, Madison, what they wrote to each other, not just as they were getting up to the revolution and the foundation of the country, but in the years afterwards. I'll tell you right now that if the founding fathers were here today, they'd be in a tavern somewhere talking a little treason. That's the thing, because we have reached that point to where there is so much power, and so much power has been laid into the federal government itself. They would not stand for it. I'm just telling you right now. So the irony of you guys, of him and others, Tim Bradner and others, saying, well, we really need to learn civics. I'm not disagreeing that we need to learn civics, but I don't know as it's teaching the lessons that you really want taught. You're basically teaching that the rule of law doesn't matter. You're basically teaching that it's okay to break the law as long as it's for something that you want, which is exactly the same thing he's saying in his pieces about the legislature and the PFD and all this kind of stuff. It's okay to break the law and have people come in as long as you're okay with having them come in. They can jump the line. They can make all the hard work that people who are coming here legally have done mean nothing. And again, if you're looking at the stories of the people who are being arrested and their histories and the ones that are really being highlighted, and I mean, these are some bad people, guys. These are not, mom and dad trying to bring their little kid across the border for a better life. There's a lot of bad people there. I'm sure there's some of that, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of bad people out there who are coming here not to escape from where they're at to make a better life, but probably to escape their misdeeds down there and to make a better criminal life here in America. I know you guys are all mad now because I'm talking about this, but it's just, I don't normally talk about the national stuff, but this is all wrapped up because he's gone and taught and just focusing on all this. And again, I'm not a huge fan of everything that's been done, but I will say right now, and the vast majority of the polling is showing that most Americans are 100% in favor of what the president's doing because they believe ultimately in fairness. They believe in an equal playing field. They believe that everybody should have, and when people jump the line and do this and then come here and then break the law and then get something for nothing and do all this other kind of stuff, they believe that that is fundamentally unfair. That's why, as bombastic and as abrasive and as insulting as the president can be and how he turns many people off in that, they still, at this point, are supporting this deportation effort because they believe in the fundamental fairness of what it is to come to America. Anyway, I lost a little bit of respect on this piece. And you can go out and read it for yourself. It's at the ADN, published on the 7th. Now more than ever, Alaska needs civics education in our schools. I think you, Mr. Bradner, and I don't know him from Adam, and I think you need to do a little bit deeper reading into what the founders and framers talked about when they were digging in on this, because again, I think most people are in support of what's going on. All right, we got to go. We're going to be back here in just a moment. Chris Story is going to come up, and we're going to continue. We will be back with more right after this. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Sorry, I was getting a little pissy there, but damn. I mean, damn. What is... more of this hand wringing about all this kind of stuff. I just, it's frustrating. It's totally frustrating. I'm going to try and see if Chris is going to join us here. I've been trying to get my phone is not cooperating this morning, which, of course, is par for the course around here these days. I'm going to see if I can get it connected one more time, and if not, then we're going to have to. He said he's going to connect on the link that I sent him. We'll see if he connects that way. Oh, here's hoping that he connects with us here. Kevin just said, "Spot on, Michael D." I could feel a rant coming on there. I was trying to control it. That was the thing. I was trying to control that rant for sure. Let me send Chris a message here. Okay. Miguel says, deport illegal immigrants. They broke the law and insult all of those that did the right thing to come into our country legally, such as my father, who became a citizen and lived in America, lived the U.S. dream and retired, and whom, by the way, thinks the United States should only give the driver's license test in all states in English only. Oh, man. I would really like Bernadette Wilson to come on the program and answer some deeper questions. She sounds promising, but I'm not totally sure what to think of her yet. There is no candidate who makes me pump my fist and say, heck yeah, says David. She's going to be on the program on Thursday. So she's going to be in the second hour on Thursday. Feel free to jump on board there. Hey, I see that Chris just jumped on board. Are you with me, sir?
Good morning. How now?
How now, brown cow? You sound good. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna mute you there. Don't freak out, but I'm gonna mute you here for a second. Put you back in the green room, and we're gonna continue on. Chris Story, our guest. Let me get through some of these comments here. Let's see. The NEA would disagree with you, Mike, in getting back to basics. Well, yeah. I mean, I would not doubt. An educated society is one that's free, and if you control the education, then you can control the society. That's David says the article writer doesn't need to sell me on the deportations. I voted for this again. I mean, even CNN, you can watch the little clips on CNN where the guys they're just flabbergasted that these polls are coming out showing such wide support for these measures. Yeah, some people are freaking out talking about the kidnappings on the street. But again, these are people mostly who have done bad things, not just breaking the law coming into the country, but many other bad things. Debbie said, who did you say wrote this opinion piece? Tim Bradner. Tim Bradner is who wrote it. David says there's definitely more than 20 million illegals in the country. The number is way underestimated. I mean, I used 10. I mean, he was shocked that they were going to arrest 3,000 people a day. Well, if there's only 10 million, it'll only take you 10 years to deport 10 million at 3,000 a day. I mean, okay. Let's see. The great Mario Marzo. Mike Juan agrees with Miguel. I agree they should know civics, but the reality is many don't teach the children how to balance a budget, so civics is much further out. That's true, Tony. If we can't teach them how to basically balance a checkbook, how are we going to teach them about deeper ideas like the 5,000-year leap and self-determination and all these other things? I mean, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Okay, we're about to rejoin the radio. Oops, no, we're not. We're a minute out. Sorry, I apologize. We're about a minute out here. We're going to rejoin here. Harold showed up this morning. Good morning, Harold. And he immediately just comes in and tries to sully our whole thing with the everything's doom and gloom. Everybody pay attention. Harold's got the doom and gloom report. We have no idea about what's going to happen to the Alaska economy. None. Zilch. We're all idiots. Only Harold knows what's going on. Okay. Thanks, Harold. Appreciate that. It's going to be what it's going to be, Harold, at this point. I'm gonna choose to focus on the positive. Because, hey, Chris Story's here to help me do that. Focus on the positive. I don't even know what his next topic is going to be, but we're going to figure it out here in a second. All right, here we go. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
The Michael Duke Show, proudly splitting the left versus right dichotomy. Yeah, I had to look that word up too. I don't think it means what he thinks it means. Here he is, though. That guy, Michael Dukes, the one with the show.
Okay, let's get to it, shall we? Get jiggy with it. I don't know where that came from. Let's not get jiggy with it. Chris Story, the man from Homer, comes on board to talk with us every week about politics, pottery, positivity. Those in that order, I guess, is what we're looking for. He joins us this morning to discuss all these things. Good morning, my friend. How are you this morning?
Another beautiful day here on top of the world, and I thought about you this morning. So the first words that popped into my mind were a glorious contagion.
A glorious contagion. Wait a minute. Wait a second. What do you mean, my friend? Tell me what are you talking about?
So are you an Ozzy Osbourne fan or no? Black Sabbath. I mean, how far back do you go?
I mean, I listened to some Crazy Train. I mean, that's
Okay.
my high school, right? I mean, a few things. It's not like my favorite thing to listen to, but there's every now and then you like to jam out, or with a little bit of Ozzy. What's on your mind?
Well, he is. He's got this farewell tour or concert that he did, and it was pretty amazing and epic. And it kind of reminded me in 1991, I believe it was 91, it might have been 92. He was in Anchorage, and Tiffany got me a ticket. She didn't want to go. I mean, she's smarter than that. But she got me a ticket, and I showed up at the concert. It was at the Sullivan Arena in Anchorage, and I showed up, and I was wearing. I'm only telling you this because it was part of the story, Michael. I was wearing khaki pants. I had my penny loafers on and a Ralph Lauren polo shirt and jacket. And let's just say I didn't fit in, but I was a huge fan, but I didn't fit in. Anyway,
Did you say you were wearing a members only jacket?
No, it was a Ralph Lauren jacket. I'm setting the stage here, but here's
Polo
the
shirt
thing.
on and a members only jacket. Okay, go ahead.
I rode my motorcycle at a 1100cc Virago, Yamaha Virago. It's the closest thing to a Harley I could afford at the time, and I rode that to the concert. I thought it was pretty awesome, but no, I just didn't fit in, and I walked out of the concert probably 20 minutes in. I was the only sober one there. Anyway, long story short, I've been re-watching some of the clips recently of his farewell concert, and I got to tell you, I think his performance of "Mama, I'm Coming Home" is probably the most earnest and most magnetic performance of his 50-year career, even though it was all done from a seated position. He was in a chair. He's unable to walk or at least move about easily without assistance. And so he's doing this whole concert in this throne, this giant black throne. His health is just, atrocious. But I thought it was the most magnetic performance, and I would say this, the most earnest performance of his entire life. Ironically, towards what is arguably towards the end of his life, and that's a contagious earnestness, and that to me is a glorious contagion, something of absolute earnestness and magnetic, even though he is immobile, even though his voice isn't strong like it used to be, even though it's by many stretches of the imagination subpar performance, but oh man, it was the most magnetic and probably the one I'll always remember, even though I saw him sing it live in concert.
Right.
I won't remember that. I will remember this performance because it was so contagious, so earnest. And it just dawned on me that that kind of magnetism is available to everybody at any time in your life. You don't need to wait till the end. You don't need to wait till you're impaired. You don't need to wait for permission. You can be magnetic by being earnest and sincere. That doesn't mean you can't be wrong, because you can be sincerely wrong, but being earnest, I think, is the heart of magnetism.
I'm still waiting for you to bring it back to this is all about me. I'm just still waiting to think. You're bringing so first thing you thought about was me, and that's what you came up with was this glorious contagion. How does that wrap that back around to me, Chris?
God, you are a narcissist, and I admire that. That's fantastic. Yeah, no, in as much as you are magnetic, and you have people like Harold who are or sort of like an aching tooth in your life, or you are one in his life, but yet you keep attracting people, even if they don't agree with you, but they continue to follow you. You are a contagion. You are somebody that somebody might just go, oh, this PFD conversation, or you bring Brad Keithley on one more time. I'm not going to tune back in till next Tuesday, and I'll listen to him again. And it's a magnetic contagion, and it's something that you've had influence. And I've told you this before. You have influence around the state that you probably don't even recognize how influential it is, but it's coming from a place of earnestness. There's not one of us in your audience that believes you are not earnest. You are not coming from a place of sincerity. And I think, going back to one of our early conversations in 2015, you were sincere and sincerely wrong about Donald Trump. And you and I got into many debates about that back then. But yet you're still, here we are 10 years later, you're a magnificent contagion. You're a glorious contagion.
And this is something that people should aspire in their life. I mean, I'm all about, well, I would say I'm all about positivity, but my name's not Chris Story. Okay. So, but I am about, again, being honest with my opinions. That's one thing I've always tried to pride myself in doing on the show is, love me or hate me. I'm going to tell you at least how I feel in the gentlest way possible. I'm not going to try and beat the hell out of you with it, but I'm going to just lay it out there. That's always kind of how I felt about it. I just want to lay it out there. Is that what people should aspire to do, is to try and just be their authentic selves?
Yeah, yes and no. No. I mean, yes, but I also mean no. So it sounds
Great.
diametric.
I'm glad you cleared that up.
Yeah, exactly. It should be clear now. No, and I was thinking about it, but I don't want to give him any more oxygen. There's somebody in your audience who's constantly this nattering napalm and so forth. He does no following, zero following, and probably will never, because I believe he's insincere in his approach. I think he's really just trying to poke the elephant anytime he can. And we all know people like that. They're not really sincere. They're not really behind the words they utter. They just kind of want attention. So, and they get it, but they're not magnetic, and they'll never attract an audience. They'll never attract a following. They'll never attract a crowd. Whereas the person who may lay it all out there, like you just said, or the person who simply knows who they are and who they're for. So I suggest writing a constitution, your own personal constitution, declaration, if you will, of your own independence, of who you are, what you stand for, who you're becoming, also who you aren't, knowing what you're not for, who you're not for. For years now, I've opened On Top of the World Radio with the Optimist Creed, and I joke around that, I do this as a filter, it's a filtration system to weed out the pessimist amongst us, and I kind of joke that way, but I'm sincere in it as well. If you hear the Optimist Creed and you're repelled by it, the show ain't for you. And that's okay. That is perfectly okay with me. I'm not here to convert pessimists to optimists. I'm here to serve the optimists, even those that are hiding inside of a pessimistic skin, but they're optimist curious, if you will. But that's who I'm for. I know exactly who I'm for, and I don't care if somebody is against what I say and doesn't want to tune in. Fine, that's not who this is for. So knowing who you are, who you're for, what are your goals in life, and how does what you're doing, saying, or what's going on around you, how does it apply to you? How do you conform to it, or you conform the world to your own ideals through knowing who you are? And I think the first and best thing you could do is write your own personal constitution. Again, it comes back to who you are. Who are you becoming? Who do you surround yourself with? Who are you for in life? And what do you want from health, your wealth, prosperity? What adventures do you want? What do you want to give and contribute to the world? Where do you want to go? And again, bottom line, probably the most important, who do you want to become while you're here? Now, magnetism should not replace critical thinking. You, as a follower of Michael Dukes, I, as a follower of Michael, we have to still have our own critical thinking, but we can become, he is magnetic and he has attracted us to his audience and become part of his show. And whatever else is you're doing, you might be attracting somebody into your life. They ought not abandon critical thinking either. That's, I think, a good follower is somebody who is also a qualified leader in life in your
Right.
own
Well,
way.
because no leader wants, well, maybe I shouldn't say that. I say no good leader, maybe I should qualify. No good leader wants blind followers, right? I mean, you want somebody who is a helpmeet with you, who can critically analyze, who can call you out if something's wrong, who can talk to you about things and discuss these things openly. I mean, you want to be able to have that analysis of thought.
And you saw how Jake Tapper had the rug pulled out from under him all those years of being buffaloed by the Biden administration. He had no
Oh, yeah.
clue. He had no clue
Yeah.
until he got a 7-figure book advance that there was something going on there. But so he was buffaloed by an earnest person or somebody who seemed to be quite earnest, but all that was being quite facetious. But I think, yeah, knowing your personal constitution inside and out, understanding it as though you could describe it like the color of a tree, understanding it inside and out, becoming a confident person creates that contagious magnetism, and knowing who you are creates deep earnestness, and then emulates, or at least would, you would
Okay.
be an attraction to confidence.
Okay, back up, because this comes back to something that we talk about quite a bit, which means you have to self-reflect. You have to look inward, which is scary to most people. They don't want to look in at their own motivations or at their own, they don't want to look, because if you know yourself, if you know your strengths and your weaknesses, then you can have that confidence. I've had confidence for most of my adult life because I understood who I was and where I came from, and I'd done some self-reflection, I'd done some of those things, and that's where I gained a lot of that confidence. And confidence is, you can fake it till you make it to a degree, but it requires that self-reflection, which I think is the hardest part for most people. We got a minute.
It's like Zig Ziglar used to cross the country with a pitcher pump. You know what I mean by a pitcher pump, with the handle that you.
Yep.
Okay. And he would always describe, look, you have to keep pumping and pumping until the water gets to the top. And then once it starts to flow, then you can just easily move that handle up and down, and the work slows down. You never stop, but it just slowly keeps moving once it's got enough pressure. And that's where you're at. I think it just takes time to know who you are, but write your own constitution and then know it inside and out.
We should end the show with the Optimus Creed, but I've only got 30 seconds. I don't know. Can you do it in 30 seconds?
How about this? Just persist until you win, because you really can.
All right. Well, that's the good stuff. Hold the line for just a second, Mr. Story. Chris Story. You can find him at ilovehomeralaska.com. His new audiobook should be out here in the next 10, 15 days or so. The Millionaire Code. We'll be looking forward to that. Tomorrow, Mike Cowles, Matsuboro Assembly, The Michael Duke Show. All right, Chris. Well, I wanted to give you one final bite at the apple here and then be able to finish up with the Optimus Creed, because I think that's important. I don't think you've ever, maybe you have. I was just going to say, I don't think you've ever given us the Optimus Creed on the show here. I know you start your show with it, but so give us your final thoughts and then hit us with the Creed on the way out the door.
Well, it's funny because, it was written over 100 years ago. And Christian Larson, I believe was his name. He's the one who founded the Optimist Society, and it still exists today. But the idea being, I think, that it's a bit of a constitution, a moment to reflect, and that you are who you are based on how you think, and how you think is based on what do you receive, what do you take in through your eyes, what do you take in through all forms of media. We talk about it a lot, you and I, like, okay, well, how much social media is in your life? How are you letting it run you? Like, I was just challenging a couple of young people the other day. I wish they would get off social media for 30 days. just 30 days. Give yourself 30, because they're talking about, the way things are. We're not really sure that men today aren't all toxic and all these kinds of things. And I'm like, wait a minute, how much of this is your reality based on your experience, and how much of it is what you're experiencing in this alternative virtual reality called online and social media? So I think that it's I think it would be important to take a close look at that and say, what's going in? What am I allowing into my life to influencing me? And it's like you talked about the border crossings and so forth. We have a constitution. We have something to protect here. But Bono said it really well, that America's greatest export is our mindset and is our sense of individual freedom. And so that's something we can export and still guard the gate and make sure that we're not being overrun.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Harold does say Chris drinks Folgers. That's apparent. And I have to argue, I know Chris drinks Captain's coffee. I know that's what Chris drinks. He drinks.
That's right. At captainscoffee.com. From the proud house to yours.
That's right. So you can do it there. All right, Chris. Well, we're gonna again. I've been teasing people with your new book, which should be coming out in audio format here shortly. So we'll be looking forward to that. But hit us with the Optimist Creed on the way out the door, Chris. Set us up for success today.
Promise yourself to be so strong that nothing, and I do mean nothing, can disturb your peace of mind. Promise yourself to talk about health, happiness, and prosperity to every single person you meet. Promise yourself to make all your friends and family feel like there's something in them, something valuable and worthwhile, because there is. Promise yourself to look at the sunny side of everything, and in your own life, make optimism come true for you. Promise yourself to think only of the best, to work only for the best, and expect only the best. Promise yourself to be just as enthusiastic about my success as you are about your own, and forget about the mistakes you've made in the past, because you've learned from them and you are pressing on to your greater achievements that are right there in your very near future. Promise yourself to wear a cheerful countenance at all times and give so much time to your own self-improvement that you do not have time to criticize me. And lastly, be too large for worry, too noble for anger, too strong for fear, and too happy in your own life to permit the presence of trouble, because you, and yes, Michael Dukes, I do mean you, are an optimist.
That's kind of optimistic, but I can live with that. I can live with that. Chris Story, my friend, my mentor in many things, and my co-host here every Tuesday right here on the program. Don't forget, you can tune in to Chris if you live on the peninsula today and Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. on KGTL or KPEN. And of course, you can always go back and listen, because you podcast the whole show every day, right? Right, Chris?
Yeah. I love HomerAlaska.com.
Yep. I love HomerAlaska.com. You can go over there and you can find all of his good stuff. And we appreciate you, my friend. I really do. And thank you so much for all you do. And we'll talk to you next week.
I'm honored to be your guest. Thanks, Michael.
Always my pleasure, my honor. And it's all about my pleasure when it's all said and done, isn't it really? I mean, it's really what it's all about. Thanks, brother. Good to talk with you. Love you. We'll talk to you soon. All right. That's Chris Story, the man from Homer. And I guess I'm the man from Homer too now. That's kind of cool when you think about it, huh? That's kind of nifty. The man from Homer. That's me. All right. That's it for me today. Again, tomorrow, we've got the candidate for the Matsu Borough. On Thursday, we've got Michelle Overstreet from my house in the Matsu, followed by Bernadette Wilson. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Be kind. Love one another. Live well. We'll see you.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.